So last week we talked about sound and flute, shakuhachi, and the bamboo flute and the cosmic significance of the sound. So I thought I'd continue this week with talking about beauty, this time more from the visual perspective. Also, however, influenced by, as usual, the page-a-day calendar. There have been a couple of things about beauty very recently. This one from last Tuesday. Every day I discover more and more beautiful things. It's enough to drive one mad. That's Claude Monet. And of course, we see people say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Well, yeah. Just think what it would be if our eye were really open, what we would see. So many beautiful things. We'd go mad, He certainly did. If you see, of course, the one that painted the water lilies, etc., and he saw there was a shimmer to them, there was an inner beauty to them, a radiance to them that most people didn't see. That's what artists help us do, and hopefully our own practice should help us to go crazy, with all the beauty around us. Just look. Especially at springtime, right behind us here we have the flowers, and so there is tremendous beauty that we don't see because we're distracted or obstructed or whatever it might be, and that's a shame. Because, well, maybe it'll help to discuss a little bit what beauty is. Not enough just to say it's in the eye of the beholder. Well, what is it? Beauty, according to scholastic philosophy, many say is one of the transcendentals. What does that mean? It means that everything has this characteristic. The transcendentals traditionally are one, true, and good. So everything that is, everything, is one insofar as it has being, it has a unity to it, but it's also true, just in its own being. It is, so it's true to itself, its own being, and it's good. So everything that is good. It's like the creation narrative in Genesis. God saw that it was, and it was good, But many say, especially in modern scholastic philosophers, that beauty is also one. So everything that is, insofar as it is, which is everything, is beautiful. Wow. So wherever you look, you should be able to see the beauty. But again, what is that exactly? I remember when I was studying in college, studying aesthetics, the philosophy of beauty. And one thing I remember very well was two schools, that one more Aristotelian, one more Platonic, where Aristotle would say, in that school would say, it has to do with proportion and harmony and articulation, a certain pleasing quality in the arrangement of the elements. So a beautiful face or a beautiful figure or a beautiful tree or a landscape. Something that has proportion and harmony to it. But the more Platonic school would say that it's a radiance. You can see that in the Monet paintings, for example. So there's an inner radiance to it, And even Aristotle himself, in one place, says the being of anything is a certain light. So there's a radiance to an inner shining, a glory to it, and the more your eye is open, the more you see it, and the more you in fact merge with it, the more you are it. So that's a very good way to do it. So insofar as anything is, it's radiant and is beautiful. So no matter, for example, a moral person, there's the beauty about justice and the actions of a person, but even one who's not has an inner radiance deep down because it is, and that's its deepest identity. You remember that very famous passage from Thomas Merton that I'm always quoting, when he had his vision, of people on the street just radiant with inner beauty. There was a point of nothingness, emptiness, that's very Buddhist, which is untouched by sin, by illusion, a point of pure truth, a point or spark, which belongs entirely to God, in theistic understanding. Inaccessible to the brutalities of our own will and the fantasies of our own mind. It's this little point of nothingness of absolute poverty is the pure glory of God in us. Like a pure diamond. Everything is a diamond, and everything altogether is a diamond, blazing with the invisible light of heaven. It is in everybody. And if we could see it, we would see these billions of points of light coming together in the face and blaze of a sun. It's all one in the end. That would make all the darkness and cruelty of life vanish completely. So it's not about a moral, everything has this insofar as it is, and we just have to go deep enough. And think of what that means for the way we treat people, Oh, he's worthy, she's not worthy, he's pretty, she's not. No, everything is beautiful, and it drives you crazy, to actually live and perceive on that level. Another thing from the page-a-day calendar a few days earlier than that. I think there is beauty in everything. What quotes normal people would perceive as ugly, I can usually see something of beauty in it. Well, exactly. Those of you who have the calendar, do you remember who that was? Alexander McQueen, the fashion designer, British fashion designer, who had some really shocking fashions that startled people. And himself, as you know, was tragically committed suicide a couple of years ago in his early 40s. So life was literally too much for him. But he could see beauty in what, people might dismiss as ugly or out of proportion or whatever. No. People who are not considered beautiful, well, they are. If you just have eyes to see. And Zen is very helpful for this because it's about being present to what is, and whatever is beautiful. And sometimes even the simplest and the most unlikely things are perceived, there as what reality is, what beauty is. So, for example, the famous case in the Mamonkan, or the Joshu's oak tree. A monk asked Joshu, what's the meaning of Bodhidharma's coming to China, who introduced Zen into China in the 6th century? Well, in other words, what's reality? And he says, it's the oak tree in the garden. So the whole of reality and all its beauty and all its majesty is just the oak tree in the garden. Now, you might think, well, of course, an oak tree in a garden is pretty. We're not talking about pretty here. We're talking about radiantly beautiful. Overwhelming, driving us crazy. So it's not just, or even primarily because the tree is beautiful in some conventional sense, but it's because it's radiant, and you're one with it. It's the Buddha, it's the Christ. If you have your eyes open. So that's why some of the other koans, when they go to something which is less obviously beautiful, there's a little more. It's a little more illuminating in one sense. For example, in case 18, in the same thing, Tozan's Makasin, which we'll see what that means. A monk asked, what is Buddha? And he says, Makasin, which is Chinese or supposedly for 3 pounds of flax. So just something you might see in a wholesale store, if you just see how radiant it is. It's blazing with the universe's light. It's not just there for, $15 a pound. 3 pounds of flax. And then Joshu again in the Blue Cliff Record, number 45. A monk asked Joshu, so all the dharmas are reduced to oneness. Okay, so everything is one, and that's beautiful and radiant in itself. But what is oneness reduced to? So where does it all take root? What is it? And Joshu said, when I was in Seishu, I made a hempen shirt, and it weighed 7 pounds. So when you go to your closet in the morning, you take out your shirt or your blouse or whatever it is you're going to put on. Are you driven mad by its beauty? It's radiant, and not just the design of the shirt. That can be beautiful too. But the hemp, the cotton, the wool, 7 pounds or whatever. I hope it doesn't weigh 7 pounds. But it's heavy with, that's what the glory in Hebrew means. Kabod literally means heavy weight. So it's heavy with the glory of God, the radiance of the Buddha. So we just have to wake up to that. But quoting the Hebrew brings me tying a couple of things together here. The burning bush, which we had in the Catholic liturgy last Sunday, is a perfect example, as I was saying in my homily there, what we're talking about. Any bush is a flame, It's burning with the glory of the radiance of the beauty of reality, but it's not consumed. In Zen terms, the absolute that's present everywhere does not consume the relative, Emptiness doesn't devour form, luckily for us. But it's there, So the bush is there. The burning bush is on flame. It's all aflame, but it's not consumed. Like the previous week, and I made that connection too. The previous gospel was the Transfiguration, where Jesus was radiant with the presence of the absolute. His clothes too. His clothes. Talk about the hempen shirt. The clothes too were radiant. As he always was, even if the apostles didn't see it, as we always are, even if our spouse or our friend or we ourselves don't see it, we are radiant and on fire with God's presence. Last night I was at a lecture at Jewish Theological Seminary, and their motto, which is on their facade and on their seal, says, Hasne enenu ukal, which means the bush was not consumed. So the Jewish Theological Seminary has as its basic motto that theme: the bush was not consumed. They're talking about the glory of God, helping us to see the glory of God, to see the splendor of reality, and luckily they're not consumed by it. So that's how important it is. But I was there to hear Sister Simone Campbell speak. How many of you have heard of Nuns on the Bus and the lobbying work that they do in Washington? Nuns on the Bus. So it's the first time I met Sister Simone, and she was, radiant, I felt I was really in the presence of a saint, the way she spoke, and what really blew me away is she was talking about her spiritual life and how her spiritual life supports everything she does, and she prays every day, of course she has to, or else she wouldn't be able to, do it. And she does Zen. I had no idea. But as soon as she started talking about holding your hands like this, I said, well, there's no way that's not Zen, But then she later, as she was speaking, confirmed it, that that's the way she prays. She does Zen. Who would have thought? She doesn't talk about it that much. Later at the book signing, I introduced myself and said who I was, and I said how impressed I was by that. And she said, "Oh, did you know the Redemptorist, who was a Zen teacher out west, who died a couple of years ago? He was her teacher, it turns out." In any case, I liked what she said. In her presentation, she was pointing out that we have to be careful. The big enemies we have in our own lives and that we have to fight against are fear, And she says fear is rampant in our country today. Yes. But also clinging. Very, very Zen. Don't cling. Don't cling. So you don't cling, of course, to your negative emotions, but she says you don't cling to the positive either. Very, very Zen, you know. You don't cling to anything good or bad, whatever you consider good or bad. You don't cling at all because it's always the next moment. And you always have to be open to the radiance of this particular moment and this one, and you can't cling to it. So that was wonderful. And of course, it enables her to see the beauty in Mitch McConnell. She said, you know, I mean, she didn't quite put it that way, but she said she's able to deal with difficult people because she can see more deeply and because she's rooted in something deeper, you know. And the glory of God is in everyone, absolutely. And that's the way we have to approach it. And she says, you know, she follows her breath, and sometimes she actually says she uses a verse from Gerard Manley Hopkins, the Jesuit poet of the 19th century. And I've given a koan, I think, on this once, on Gerard Manley Hopkins, who died at 45. But it fits perfectly with the theme I'm dealing with tonight, you know, when she said what she uses. God's grandeur, it's what probably his most famous poem. I remember studying it in high school. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. And this is the line she uses for her own, sometimes for her own practice. It will flame out like shining from shook foil. It's a great verse, you know. Flaming out like shining from shook foil. So the flaming out, you know, that's the burning bush. It's us. It's the power of the energy of the beauty of the absolute, you know, in us, and like shining from shook foil. So it's. She says the shining from shook foil is what comes from the flame when you go out into the world. So you're going out into the world is the shining of shook foil. You're the foil, and God's foil, so to speak. And, you know, you're flaming out, you know, in your own practice, but then out into the world, you know, to spread that grandeur, that beauty, and to awaken it and affirm it in others, you know. Sometimes awaken it in others, even in Congress members, you know. We're certainly not aware of it. So that's a great way to imagine, you know, what you're doing in the world. You're flaming out like shook foil, you know, because you're first experiencing it, you know, in yourself, and then you can see it everywhere. You know, and in the end, of course, we realize we're all this one glory, all this one radiance. That's the Buddha, that's the Christ. And the articulation of our relationships with one another on that higher level, that's part of the beauty and the harmony, and the, you know, to talk about that first definition of beauty. But above all, it's the radiance. And just on the opposite page, another poem where Christ plays in 10,000 places, lovely in limbs and lovely in eyes not his, to the Father through the features of men's faces. So Christ, or the Buddha, if you like, plays in 10,000 places, lovely in limbs and lovely in eyes not his. There's that beauty, to the Father, the Absolute, through the features of our faces. So that's what we have to realize we are, and live accordingly, live from that, and recognize in one another. And it's all the Christ, it's all the Buddha. And just to come back down to earth for a second, the next poem. Nothing is so beautiful as spring. Yes, that's what we have behind us. And hopefully we feel that too. And why is that? Well, spring is new life. It's abundance of life and energy and power and glory. So that's another way of not just looking at it, but being it and feeling it and allowing that to blaze out in the world like shook foil.